Veterans Day 2022, a day to honor those who have answered the call to service. From the most senior veterans to those brave men and women in our armed forces, they remain the backbone of our country. We'll hear from them, from their bases overseas to their posts here at home. Richard Engel joins us from Ukraine as the U.S. helps with artillery and funding.
Without all of these American weapons, they would not have been able to keep the Russians at bay for this long.
Plus, we look at the state of our military today and the health of our veterans.
Generations of vets going back to Vietnam were exposed to toxins in their deployment, and those exposures lead to conditions and illnesses that we want to address.
You'll meet veterans still in search for their own healing.
I felt like my brain was reset. I had a new perspective on life.
And the families who sacrifice and lean into love through it all.
He puts everybody before himself. That's that veteran mentality.
Join us for our Veterans Day special as we take you beyond the battlefield to spotlight the lives of our American vets. And good evening, I'm Tom Llamas.
And I'm Lucy Bustamante. On this Veterans Day, we pay tribute to all of the men and the women currently serving in the U.S. military and those who have served.
The veteran population stands just over 18.5 million strong, 15 million accounting for wars in the years before 9/11, and almost 3.5 million who answered the call to serve after the towers fell.
And improving diversity is actually a centerpiece of the Defense Department right now. Secretary Lloyd Austin announcing a committee just a couple of months ago on this exact issue.
And Lucy, here's what our veterans look like now. 69% are white, 13% black, 8% Hispanic, 2% Asian, and less than 1% Native American and Pacific Islanders. Along with diversity of our forces, their health is also in the spotlight this year, from their physical injuries to mental wounds to their reproductive rights.
NBC News correspondent Aaron Gilchrist actually sat down with the Secretary of Veterans Affairs to discuss those issues and much more.
Every freedom we enjoy and every interesting thing that's happening in this country, you don't have to scratch hard to find a veteran involved in that, in fact, making that happen. So the first message is thank you.
Veterans Affairs Secretary Dennis McDonough says that gratitude was made more apparent with the signing of the PACT Act this past August, described as the most monumental piece of legislation for veterans' health care in years and potentially expanding care to some 3.5 million post-9/11 veterans.
What do veterans need to know this is going to change in their lives?
At its heart is a recognition that generations of vets going back to Vietnam were exposed to toxins in their deployment. And those exposures lead to conditions and illnesses that we want to address. And we'll get you in to get care first. And second, we'll get you benefits to make sure that we're making you whole for the conditions you've suffered from.
For female veterans, the VA for the first time is offering abortion services as a reaction to the overturning of Roe v. Wade.
We will provide abortion services in cases of rape, incest, where the life or the health of the veteran is impacted. Women are the fastest growing cohort of veterans at VA. And we think, especially in states where veterans who need that emergency service, if they don't have it, we feel duty bound to provide it.
Are you able to offer any protections to people who are looking for those services and to the people who are performing those services in these places where there's a threat of prosecution?
We feel like we have the right support and the right institutions in place to protect our providers and to protect our veterans.
Under McDonough's watch, the VA has also set new goals and programs to reduce homelessness in the veteran population.
Do you see an end to veteran homelessness
Yes.
in the near future, and how do we get there and stay there?
Yeah, between 2020 and 2022, veteran homelessness has been reduced by 11%. That's real progress. We still have a ways to go.
The VA is also working to end the veteran suicide crisis. It's funding new innovations and staffing up mental health providers across the agency's facilities. McDonough says suicide prevention is his top clinical priority, and he believes the Pentagon is elevating mental health care for active duty service members as well.
Do you think the Department of Defense is doing enough to shore up their mental health from boot camp before they become veterans?
And I was invited by Secretary Austin to spend time with his senior leaders, all of his combatant commanders, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, and the Secretaries of Army, Navy, Air Force. And this issue dominated the conversation because it is such a priority for President Biden, for Secretary Austin. He is constantly telling the force, mental health is your health.
So important we keep a spotlight on it. That was NBC's Aaron Gilchrist with Secretary of Veterans Affairs Dennis McDonough.
And now we're going to turn from veterans to our active duty service members to get a sense of where they are serving right now.
Between active duty, National Guard, and reservists, there are nearly 2 million serving inside the U.S. and less than 200,000 overseas.
And we are still in 173 countries all around the globe, with our biggest footprint by far in Japan, where we have more than 55,000 troops.
Germany with more than 36,000, South Korea with nearly 26,000 American troops.
That's right. And then while Ukraine, of course, has captured the attention of Americans, U.S. forces are not physically on the ground there. But the Department of Defense is still providing large support in the war against Russia.
NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel is in Kyiv with details on exactly what that help looks like on the battlefield.
Tom, Lucy, for the first time in decades, really, the United States on this Veterans Day doesn't have large numbers of troops actively deployed to a war zone on a combat mission since U.S. troops pulled out of Afghanistan a year ago. But that doesn't mean that the U.S. military isn't on war footing because of what is happening here in Ukraine. There aren't American troops here. There are no American soldiers or Marines patrolling the city of Kiev, where I am right now. But the U.S. is providing the Ukrainian government, President Zelensky and his advisors, with intelligence, help with battle tactics, and vast quantities of money and weapons. And those funds and those resources have proven decisive. And the Ukrainians will be the first ones to tell you that without all of these American weapons, that they would not have been able to keep the Russians at bay for this long. The Russian military is 8 times the size of the Ukrainian armed forces. And the Russians say because of all these weapons that are coming in, it is not truly, Russia is not truly fighting just against Ukraine, but against the West.
That was Richard Engel for us. Those weapons, all that funding helps, but of course the courage of those Ukrainians as well. So admirable. We thank Richard for that report. When we come back, the cutting edge of medical science using psychedelics to treat PTSD.
But before we go, Today's Show contributor and former New Orleans news anchor Karen Swenson asks our service members one very important question.
I'm Karen Swenson with the Louisiana National Guard. What's the best way to thank a veteran?
I would say just simply saying thank you for your service. Donating to veteran causes.
Listen to their stories.
Buy them a meal.
But a simple thank you goes a very long way.
And make sure to thank their families as well, because they sacrifice just as much as we do.
Welcome back. More and more veterans desperate to heal from their war trauma. They are turning to alternative therapies to treat their PTSD, the signature wound of post 9/11 veterans.
NBC News chief medical correspondent and Air Force vet Dr. John Torres has their story.
The physical wounds of war are often obvious to the eye, but then there are the wounds you have to listen for.
I didn't want to live anymore. I wasn't even afraid of dying anymore. I was almost looking forward to it.
For former Marine Ace Crespo, his wounds were deep, rooted in the guilt of losing his friend to an IED in Afghanistan.
I tried to close his eyes while I was praying, and I couldn't because there was so much dirt embedded in his eyelid. I just remember the choppers coming in. We had to pick him up, and that was the last time I saw Frankie.
That was October of 2010. But for Ace, he says years of antidepressants and marijuana use didn't stop the pain. There are hundreds of thousands of veterans struggling, which is why the VA says it's making mental health top priority. 677,000 vets have been diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder since 9/11. And the VA reports 30,000 service members have taken their own lives in the last 20 years. But that number could be double, according to recent studies by academia and veterans organizations.
I felt so alone when I got home. I felt like I didn't deserve help.
The VA standard care for PTSD includes antidepressants and psychotherapy, but experimental therapies outside of conventional medicine are gaining acceptance. Ace is being treated with ketamine by psychotherapist Dr. Hannah McLean.
So ketamine, I think, is really important, especially in the veteran community, particularly because it's good for suicidal ideation.
Ketamine is a hallucinogenic, and coupled with psychotherapy, it can often lead to breakthrough moments in healing, and it's legal in the U.S.
In and out through your nose.
NBC Philadelphia was given access to watch as Ace started his ketamine treatment. The gut-wrenching memory of Frankie dying at his side became vivid once again. 2 hours later, the drug wears off.
Thank you.
You're doing the work.
But there's another class of mind-bending drugs generating buzz among vets: psychedelics. Psychedelics are a Schedule I narcotic and still illegal in most states, which is why thousands of veterans have left the U.S. in search of this alternative healing, according to various vet nonprofits we spoke with. Jesse Gould found his healing in Peru.
I was living a very unhealthy lifestyle. There's things that I had to confront.
The former Army Ranger attended a retreat using the psychedelic plant, ayahuasca.
Never thought I was going to do psychedelics, but there I was, sort of at a point of no return.
His treatment, rooted in indigenous ceremonies, provided by both native healers and psychotherapists.
Some of the hardest things I've ever had to do. But then towards the end, I felt like my brain was reset. I had a new perspective on life.
Former Navy SEAL Marcus Capone says the VA treatment didn't work.
I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder, post-traumatic stress, mild traumatic brain injury. I felt like even though I was being diagnosed and they were telling me that there was something wrong, they really weren't telling me how to fix it.
Marcus started antidepressants while on active duty, but it wasn't until after he left the Navy that the severe mood swings began.
He hadn't deployed in several years at that point, yet I was more fearful of his death here in suburbia in the United States than I ever was when he was deploying to war overseas.
Marcus's wife, Amber, was desperate to find a solution. She learned through word of mouth about psychedelic retreats. Veterans leaving for foreign countries where the drugs are legal, like Mexico, Costa Rica, Peru, and the Netherlands. Retreats like this one in Jamaica, run by vets.
It's really important for us to create this space for our veteran community.
So Marcus traveled to Mexico.
I did one session of a medicine called Ibogaine. It was life-changing. I felt after my, I'd say, 12-hour experience that all the weight had just come off my shoulders. I didn't have any more anxiety. I wasn't depressed.
For me, it was like being reunited with the person that I met and fell in love with long before 9/11, long before the wars. It was literally like he was back.
I am excited about the potential of these treatments for PTSD.
Dr. Rachel Yehuda is the head of psychedelic psychotherapy and trauma research at Mount Sinai in New York. She's also at the helm of a new clinical trial for the VA on psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy to treat PTSD.
The early data show that the outcomes are better with this treatment compared with the more traditional SSRIs or even talk therapy, both of which can be profoundly helpful. The best way to understand this is that the psychedelic drug provides an opportunity to be in the frame of mind where really good psychotherapy can occur. So what you actually learn about yourself during a psychedelic trip can be extraordinary.
Other studies have also found benefits of psychedelics. NYU Langone found that magic mushrooms decreased alcohol abuse, and a study published in the Journal of Nature Medicine showed it decreased symptoms of depression. While Dr. Yehuda's clinical trial forges ahead, so do the veterans seeking psychedelics. With so many seeking treatment, the Navy SEAL Foundation released this video, warning of the risks.
I never experienced suicidal ideation until I used psychedelics. Now I have it every day, and I can't get back to myself.
Is there harm in using these, especially with those that have PTSD?
So psychedelics aren't actually physiologically dangerous drugs. The real danger is that all of a sudden you're confronting material that you usually bury. And if you're not really ready for it, if somebody doesn't talk to you about the way that you will feel when you're taking the psychedelic, then this can be very overwhelming.
The hope of Doctors McLean and Yehuda, and others like them, is to make sure that veterans suffering from PTSD can get safe, long-lasting treatment right here in the country they serve. You come across as very passionate about it. Is that because you really believe this could be a big step in the direction of helping out?
I know the standard of care is insufficient for many of our veterans, and they deserve to have this. But at the same time, I also know that we don't have enough information to replace the standard of care yet.
In line with military culture, the Capone sought to help their own, celebrating their healing by paying it forward. They started a nonprofit which they say has raised enough money to send more than 700 vets on psychedelic journeys since 2018. At least 5 other veteran organizations are doing the same, including Jesse Gould's. His nonprofit, along with one other, paid for Ace Crespo's therapy.
My wish is that this veteran can get the life he deserves, get a life that is not only free of trauma, free of PTSD, but one that he can actually thrive and enjoy life and not be burdened by his past.
Once bonded by war, now bonded by the search for healing.
That was no doubt impactful, and of course, I think it's going to lead to a lot of new conversations.
Yeah.
To know there are vets who are leaving the country to find that type of healing.
And they are trying to affect the change at home, which is so important for this community. These veterans that you just saw, they're also involved in the effort to legalize psychedelics in the United States.
Yeah, I know you've been looking into it, Lucy. So what is the status of legalization?
It really depends on which state you live in at this point, Tom, but we have yet to see what happens at the federal level. But Colorado, just in these midterm elections, they became the latest state to pass the most progressive drug reform measure in this country yet. So here's how theirs is different from everyone else's. It allows psychedelic clinics to operate. It also decriminalizes use and possession of psychedelics. They followed the Oregon model, which did this 2 years ago. And then Connecticut passed its own version that approves them for research in veterans and first responders.
All right. Before we take a break, a quick shout out to our Dr. John Torres. Get this, Lucy. I know you know this. He's a proud veteran who served active duty in the U.S. Air Force and the Colorado Air National Guard.
He is wonderful. He's also the son of an Air Force veteran. So thank you, Dr. John, for your service.
Yeah. When we come back, the intimate story of one family who employed love, patience, and farming to heal the severe symptoms of PTSD.
But first, we're going to hear more shout outs from our service members.
Who would you like to give a shout out to?
I want to give a shout out to my family, Brenda and Kai. I love you guys.
So my dad, retired Master Sergeant in the United States Army, along with my mom.
To my husband, who is currently deployed with HSC-12 on board USS Ronald Reagan.
Wishing you all a happy Veterans Day from a retired and fellow service member.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day.
Happy Veterans Day.
To Lieutenant Commander Jessica Bernez, who's her mom, happy Veterans Day, everybody.
Welcome back to our Veterans Day special, and we're back now with a story of veterans finding a new calling, but this time in the classroom.
That's right. NBC News Pentagon correspondent Courtney Kuby has this story.
After more than 2 decades in the Navy, John Altman still wanted to serve. He swapped his years at sea for days in the classroom.
I'm on the front lines of developing America's #1 natural resource. What is that? I teach high school.
John discovered a program called Troops to Teachers, supporting men and women leaving the military to become educators, providing money, counseling, and job referrals with a focus on science, math, and special education in low-income communities. For Altman, who spent his career mentoring young sailors, teaching was a natural transition.
I'm glad I found the program. I think it's important for me to be an example, just as when I wore the uniform.
After the Trump administration canceled Troops to Teachers in 2020, last year Congress restarted it. But the Pentagon still is not funding the program in many states, even as schools around the country are struggling to fill teacher and school support jobs.
The teacher shortage that you hear about is real.
I'm in the trenches trying to find teachers.
The National Education Association estimates there's a shortage of roughly 300,000 teachers and staff across the country. Since Troops to Teachers was created in 1993, more than 100,000 men and women have traded in their uniforms for a chalkboard.
What is it that you hope that you instill upon your students?
You got to work hard if you want something. You can't Google your way through life.
Life lessons his students at Paradise Valley High School take to heart.
He's definitely taught me to get stuff done on time and not put it off.
People from the military could basically go and do anything, and he chose to come be a teacher.
His fellow educators agree.
They're the structured life that they lived in the military and the discipline, that translates well to the classroom. And then, of course, the relevant experience that they've had, relaying that to the kids, which is super important for high school kids especially, to see relevance in what they're learning.
When you think of yourself, do you think of yourself as a sailor or as a teacher?
I'll always, that's an emotional one. I'll always think of myself as a sailor.
For Altman, the classroom is a new battle rhythm with the same mission.
I think that's my duty assignment. Now, I believe in that. These youngsters are our tomorrow. I really love my Navy. And I really love teaching.
Just some of our amazing men and women giving back, even back here in the United States. All right, earlier in the show, you heard about hundreds of thousands of veterans suffering from PTSD. But now we look at how entire families can suffer.
This next story is about one of our own anchors from the Telemundo station in Orlando. Iris Delgado is in front of the public every single day reporting the news. But in her private life, she's ready to share. She's another military spouse learning to deal with PTSD.
It's graduation day at the Rodale Organic Farming Institute in Kutztown, Pennsylvania. But to understand how big this moment is for 41-year-old Adam Strickland, you need to talk to his 10-year-old daughter, Elia.
I am so proud of everything that he has done for this family, everything that he has sacrificed.
She's just the positive influence that I need. I mean, if she wasn't there, then I probably would not be here. And
that is no exaggeration. This story starts long ago when he was only 18 years old, a U.S. Army soldier deployed to Iraq.
I was a 19 Delta reconnaissance corporal at the time.
As we walk through the farm that now brings him peace, memories of his unit invading Fallujah flood his mind.
Yeah, when I was getting into the military, I thought I was going to be doing things to protect people.
But what Adam experienced was just the opposite and against the people that he considered the most innocent.
A lot of brutal actions were taken against a lot of, children and women that I probably don't agree with.
It has been 20 years, and still he can barely tolerate the memories. Memories he tried to erase with alcohol.
You knew what the source was to the addiction, though. Like, you knew it was combat trauma.
Yeah. It's not like a situation where you're going out to drink to have fun. It's where you're drinking because you're not happy and because you're remorseful and regretful from your past actions.
I had no clue what PTSD was. I didn't know I married someone who had PTSD.
Iris says Adam barely spoke about the war. When they married, he was a successful auditor, but she noticed that he had a hard time celebrating life's happiest moments.
It never crossed my mind. I just thought, okay, maybe he's just grumpy. I just adjusted.
You've always adjusted.
Always.
PTSD made Adam believe that he wasn't deserving of his own joy. He knows it's illogical. As we walk through the fields, he remembers the night that changed everything 1 year ago. Adam tried to take his own life and then changed his mind. He woke up Iris begging to go to the hospital.
And to think that he might have done that while I was sleeping, and to wake up to that? Yeah, no.
That moment, his rock bottom.
And so I just followed his commands. Okay. I have to go. We have to go. So then I had to figure out how to leave our daughter so that she didn't witness anything more.
After 7 days in the VA hospital, it was time to tell Ilya more about Daddy's life in the military.
I learned that he was a very, very good soldier. He was one of the best out there, but the military can have some after effects. Sometimes I just wish that I could take all that weight off of him because I love him so much, and I really hope he knows that.
Ilya had seen a lot. And that was the day that Adam decided to get help, trading the corporate world for the crops of Pennsylvania.
Adam is the most intelligent man I've ever met. The kindest, the most caring. He puts everybody before himself. That's that veteran mentality. And it's okay to put yourself first. And that's what I need him to realize.
Adam has found a sense of accomplishment and camaraderie within the veteran program at the Institute, started by a veteran himself who has seen this story play out.
I think it provides an opportunity to give them a new mission focus, allows them to be outside, work in a healthy environment.
Adam's new mission would be finding his happiness, serving his community.
That's why you joined to begin with.
Yeah, and so I think that's where I'm trying to get back to, without the whole killing part of it. When I have a profitable farm going, and when I'm serving my local community with nutritious produce, organic produce, then I'll be happy.
And just when their family came so close to a tragic end, Mila is the face of a new beginning.
I think God has brought a tiny human in our lives when we've needed it most. Mila Mercy. Mercy. I had to name her Mercy because God's been very merciful with us.
Are you proud of yourself for today?
No, it's a long ways to go, but I'm happy I'm here today.
I'm happy you're here today.
Tom, this is very much a story of healing, no doubt about it. Adam is joining his family in Orlando this month, where he is starting his own farmstead called Healthy Human, and he cannot wait to start this new peaceful and healthy chapter in his life.
Such an incredible journey. And Lucy, we want to thank you for spearheading this special, for telling all these stories and helping continue our commitment to veterans and veterans' families and families like yours, because you're the wife of a veteran as well. So thank you for your service. We thank you for watching. I'm Tom Llamas.
And I'm Lucy Bustamante, and thank you and all of your families for your service. Happy Veterans Day.
Greetings from the 31st Fighter Wing here at Aviano Air Base, Italy.
From the Louisiana National Guard.
Greetings from Naval Air Station North Island in San Diego. We wanted to wish you all Happy Veterans Day!
Happy Veterans Day!
Happy Veterans Day!
Happy Veterans Day!
To everyone back at home,
Happy Veterans Day!
Happy Veterans Day!
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.